All right, it is February 28th, 2022, and I'm Joe Terosian, and this is RamView. Back with you to talk about Rams and all stuff Rams in the offseason. When other shows shut down, we're going to still be talking Rams football because this isn't the silly season. This is the season where you get an idea of where everyone's going and what they're going to do. So we're going to be talking about Rams. We're going to be talking about Rams centers. We're going to be talking about the NFL draft, some free agents, and we're going to be talking about draft history. And we're going to be talking about attachments. And that's one of the things the modern football fan has to get by is attachments, and it really is about your team and not who plays for your team. So we're going to get started here. And first thing I want to do, talking about centers, is I wanted to do a follow-up. Is that I mentioned it last weekend was that the Rams, Les Snead. There we go. Let's drink some water here. Les Snead has only drafted one center with 88 picks over the 10 years that he's been overseeing the Rams drafts. And that's Brian Allen. And so that was kind of amazing. But I went back and I was wondering, because a couple people asked, who have the other Rams centers been during the Les Snead tenure? Because that's the one you got to look at. And then you look a little closely at the Snead-McVay era, which began in 2017. But in 2012, the Rams had an undrafted guy at center named Robert Turner. He was out of the league after that season. The Rams signed Scott Wells. He had been the starting center for the Packers in the 2011 Super Bowl, and he played one more year. And he actually came to the Rams in 2012, got injured, and that's why Turner had to play. But Wells lasted 2 seasons, and then he was gone. He was replaced by Tim Barnes, an undrafted free agent, right? And Tim Barnes was the starter in 2015 and 2016, and then he was gone. And then in 2017, they brought in John Sullivan. He was the starting center for the playoff season in 2017. He was the starting center in the Super Bowl in 2018. And then after that, though, they didn't renew his contract. He didn't get another contract in the NFL, and his career ended. In 2019, rookie Brian Allen played a lot of snaps at center, but that job was eventually taken over by Austin Blythe. And there's an interesting note about that season. We'll get back to it. And then in 2020, Austin Blythe did a pretty solid job, but he was a free agent, and the Rams offered him more money, but he took less to go to Kansas City. Then Kansas City drafted Creed Humphrey, and Austin Blythe was left out in the cold. And of course, this past year, Brian Allen started all 16 games. The interesting thing when you look at that is that you've got two-year starters all the way through. Well, Robert Turner in 2012, but that was because of an injury. But Scott Wells started 2 years, gone. Tim Barnes, gone. John Sullivan, 2 years, gone. And then, you got Brian Allen and Austin Blythe in this hybrid season in 2019, but that was the year everything was a disaster, right? Rams couldn't run the ball. Rams couldn't block the ball. I think they finished 9-7 and couldn't block the ball, couldn't block the pass rush, couldn't stop the pass rush. And they finished 9-7 and out of the playoffs. And isn't that interesting that the only year the Rams haven't had a consistent center is the only year in the McVay era. They made the playoffs in 2017 with John Sullivan. They made the playoffs in 2018 with John Sullivan, 2020 with Austin Blythe, 2021 with Brian Allen. They win the Super Bowl. But the only year they had any issues, right, where they didn't go to the playoffs, they didn't win the division, was the year that Brian Allen was a rookie and not ready to start. And also Austin Blythe had to step in, and that was 2019. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then when you start looking at what's going on in the NFL right now, a lot of players are getting ready to go. And Austin Corbett and Brian Allen are both free agents. And that's one of the hardest things these days for sports fans. It's saying goodbye, right? We get attached to players. When I was growing up, the first full season I saw was the 1973. I started being a Ram fan in 72, but the first full season I saw from start to finish, including preseason, all the way through, kind of began with Dallas and ended with Dallas. Began with a Dallas loss, ended with a Dallas loss, was 1973. And in between, from 73 through 79, I suffered through 4 NFC conference title losses. Once to twice to the Vikings, twice to the Cowboys, and it was painful. But when they finally broke through and went to the Super Bowl 14 in 79, January of 1980, you know who was still on that team from 73 was Fred Dreyer, Larry Brooks, both Youngbloods, Jim Youngblood, Jack Youngblood. Of course, Jack Youngblood, that's a legendary performance. And then Dave Elmendorf. They were all still on that team. So was Lawrence McCutcheon. And along the way, they picked up, Dennis Harrah, Doug France, Jackie Slater, Rod Perry, Pat Thomas, and you were invested in these guys. You were so invested. And Wendell Tyler was just into his own. He was in his third season. Nolan Cromwell was in his third season. And you were rooting for them. You were attached to them. There was a kinship there. But to think that was 7 seasons of a core group staying together, that's just impossible nowadays. And you don't see it. And so you have to be prepared to say goodbye because the players come and they go. And that's what's going to happen with the Rams this year is that hopefully it's not too many players, but over the course of the next 2 years, you're going to see this whole Super Bowl team probably overturned and become something else. How much remained of 2018? Havenstein, Whitworth, Aaron Donald. Think about it. How much that changed after 2018 and that Super Bowl loss and who was in the lineup in 2021 and 2022 in January. But think about this. I loved Michael Brockers. I thought Michael Brockers was a steady, solid DT for the Rams for 9 seasons. I thought the Rams got some good clicks out of him. He was nothing. He was a first-round pick, but he wasn't a flop, right? But I didn't want to see Michael Brockers go. But after seeing Greg Gaines and Sebastian Joseph Day play this year, it's like, Michael Brockers? Who? Never. I don't want to get rid of Greg Zuerlein. We don't want Greg Zuerlein to go. He's the one that kicked the field goal in OT that sent us to the playoffs in New Orleans. Matt Gay? Oh, I'm down. I'm down with Matt Gay. Great. Zuerlein? Zuerlein who? Right? Todd Gurley. Oh, man, Todd Gurley's the best back in the NFL. Who's Todd Gurley? I got Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson and Sony Michel. The hard one, John Johnson last year. Oh, my gosh. I don't want to lose JJ. Don't lose JJ. I remember writing that there's anything they can do. Keep JJ. Keep John Johnson. We need him at safety. He's great. We signed Eric Weddle. We won a title. Eric Weddle only played in the playoffs. They got away with Jordan Fuller. They got away with Taylor Rapp. They got away with Nick Scott. And I love John Johnson, but you know what? I'll let John Johnson go to Cleveland. I'll take the comp pick, and I'll take the Super Bowl title. There were a lot of folks that said, "Hey, man, Goff got us to a Super Bowl. Goff got us there. Don't give up on Jared Goff." Goff who? We got Matt Stafford, and we won a Super Bowl. And so it happens so quick. One of the other ones that was kind of interesting was this guy was at the top of his game as well. Do you remember a cornerback for the Rams for about 6 seasons named Trumaine Johnson? I think you do. You would probably remember Trumaine Johnson. He was 3rd-round pick, I think 65th overall, 2012. Great draft pick. Became a starter, excellent player, and he was a good starter for us for 6 seasons. Came with the Rams to L.A. in 2016, played in 2017 in the playoff loss to Atlanta, and then he was gone. Signed a free agent contract with the Jets, played there 2 years, and his career is over. Everyone loved Trumaine Johnson, but the next year we were starting Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters at the corners, and we were running Troy Hill at the slot, and we went to the Super Bowl, and it was Trumaine who? So prepare yourselves. There will be pain in this coming offseason, and one of them could be, and some of them could be, Corbett and Allen among the other free agents. I hate change along the offensive line, but we know the Rams need to get more physical. We know those guys did a great job, fantastic job. We won a Super Bowl with them. But if you're standing still, it means you're not going forward. And if you're not growing, you're dying. And so the Rams need to look at that. But even if you want to bring Austin Corbett back and Brian Allen back, the market might say you might have to pay them more to keep them. If you look what just happened in the NFL over the weekend, Tampa Bay's offensive line just lost Pro Bowl left guard Ali Marpet. Played 7 seasons. He's about 28, and he just retired. And he just made his first Pro Bowl. He was a D3 guy, and he just made his first Pro Bowl. Also, their center, Ryan Jensen, is a free agent. He's going to command big bucks. Also, right guard Alec Kappa is a free agent. You get the feeling that maybe Tom Brady knew that his interior line was maybe having other plans for 2022, and maybe it kind of bolstered his decision maybe to bail. But here's the thing: with Jensen and Kappa on the market and Tampa Bay now looking for talent, Corbett and Allen suddenly become a little more better commodities because Brian Allen's not going to command Ryan Jensen money. He's just not. He's not at that level, but he's a competent, capable top 10 center in the NFL. And someone's going to pay him. They're not going to pay him Jensen money. They might say, well, let Jensen walk. We'll bring Allen in. And Allen might make a little more than the $5 million a year that he's projected to make. Same thing with Corbett in regards to other free agents. Dallas will be looking for a free agent because they've got issues. Unless they franchise tag somebody, Dallas has issues because Connor Williams, who I brought up last week, he might be a candidate now for Tampa Bay to give him a little more money than Dallas would. Dallas has got salary cap issues. Then, maybe we can go on the cheap a little bit, get a very competent top tier guard and go get Austin Corbett. It's just stuff like that that's happening. So you need to get prepared for goodbyes, right? And you can't be emotional. That's the thing. Fans get emotional, but Les Snead and company, they can't afford to be emotional and they need to move on. And speaking of Les Snead, and by the way, before I get to the Les Snead section, I just want to thank everybody for the support. I had some really great clicks. Anytime I get clicks this time of year right now, I'm really happy because the football season's over and you're being convinced it's silly season and it doesn't matter. And my whole goal is to say it does matter because it matters for the Rams. The Rams fans should be more nuanced, that we don't care about draft day on the first day. We care about day 2 of the draft, day 3 of the draft, because that's where we get the talent that fills the gaps, that allows us to pull in the big name superstar. And so I want to say thank you for following, hitting like and subscribe. And if you hadn't hit like and subscribe, please hit like and subscribe. Working on some stuff to go full-blown podcast pretty soon to marry the two. And so we're excited about the future. And I just want to say thank you for all the clicks you gave me over the weekend, even though I know it's a slow time of year. You can also follow me at joetarosian.com. Later today, I'll be posting FanView, which is a more general sports column. That's at joetarosian.com. And then later at the end of the week, I'll also be posting from the Ram Cave, which updates our draft board. And that's to make you aware of names, not necessarily names we're saying the Rams are going to pick, but names the experts are throwing out there, the positions they're looking at. And that's what we're about, is just getting you ready to see what the possibilities are for your team and such. So anyway, I want to say thank you for all the clicks you've given us. One of the things that is interesting is, again, Les Snead and looking what the Rams have done. He has his blank. I have my Super Bowl shirt on that my sister-in-law sent me, who lives in Greater Cincinnati, just across the river in Kentucky. So I am wearing this. This was a gift. This was also a gift as well. This was from one of the guys in my church. He gave me a Rams Super Bowl champion portable mug. I got coffee. I got water in there right now. But that's what I'm wearing. We talked about Les Snead and such, as he has had 88 draft picks over 10 drafts. One center. We mentioned that. He's only drafted one center, Brian Allen. But there was a couple of other interesting things that popped up that we'll close the show with. Only one center, but among the 88 players that Les Snead has drafted, do you know he's only drafted one player from USC? That was TJ McDonald. Do you know he's only drafted one player from Penn State? That was Nick Scott. Do you know he's only drafted one player from Notre Dame? And that was Ben Skoranek. And he's drafted 0, thinking of our own backyard here, 0 from UCLA. The Rams have been in town since 2016. Prior to that, from 2012 to 2015, when Les Snead was running the show and they were in St. Louis, had several draft picks from Missouri, Memphis, Western Missouri, Zerline, and that area, Oklahoma. And they seem to really know their region. But here, 5 years in LA, 6 years in LA, going into their, 6th season, I think it is, 7th season in LA. They've only drafted one USC product and no UCLA products. That kind of gives you an idea of where local college football has been out here. So I thought that was something that was interesting. The other thing is that he's overseen 10 drafts. 8 times in those drafts, his first pick has been on offense and only twice on defense. Now, you're thinking, well, we didn't have number ones. No, I'm talking about first pick in the second round, your first pick with the third round, your first pick, wherever. But the interesting thing is that they've drafted the first player they've drafted on defense. It's happened twice. It happened in 2012 with Michael Bronkers, and it happened in 2019 with Taylor Rapp. And you're thinking, well, what about Aaron Donald? Remember, Aaron Donald was taken like 13th or 14th, and the number 2 pick in the 2014 draft, the draft where the Rams did get Aaron Donald with their second number 1 pick, they drafted Greg Robinson. That was a swing and a miss. That was as big a whiff as, wow, what can you say? That was a huge debacle. Kind of looks like the Lakers basketball season. And Greg Robinson right now is facing criminal charges. So that was a huge whiff. And that's the funny thing about Greg Robinson. That came only, 5 years after 2009, and the Rams had drafted the tackle out of Baylor, Justin Smith, second overall pick, and he flopped out too. And so that's an interesting thing to think about Snead's draft, is that especially now with, not so, Taylor Rapp was drafted during the McVay era, is what the Rams are looking at. And right now, the Rams are looking at offensive line. All the mock drafts are showing the Rams looking at offensive line. Also, something to keep an eye on as you look at the draft board and it builds going towards April. In 5 of the 10 drafts that Snead has overseen, the Rams have drafted at least 2 players from the same school. And what I mean by that is they drafted one guy from, a school, and then they said, oh, we're checking out this guy, but oh, this guy's good too. It reminds me of when the Dodgers signed Fernando Valenzuela. They went down to Sonora. They were scouting, I think, a shortstop, and they saw Fernando pitch. And it's like, okay, we'll take this guy. But in 2013, the Rams had that high draft pick with Tavon Austin, but they also drafted Austin's teammate, Stedman Bailey, out of West Virginia. And they were the bookend receivers for that West Virginia team. I don't know if Rich Rod was there anymore in those days, but I don't think he was. But that was interesting. In 2014, they drafted Greg Robinson, of course, but another guy they drafted was Trey Mason, and he was a running back. He gave the Rams a really good productive first season. But then they drafted Todd Gurley, and then Mason just went AWOL, disappeared. He finally emerged in Canada a couple of years ago, but I don't know where he's at now. That same draft in 2014, the Rams drafted E.J. Gaines, a defensive back from Missouri, but also out of Missouri. You remember that because there was so much stuff circling around it. Was the year they drafted Michael Sam. And a lot of people think that, one, it proved true. Michael Sam, forget his status, his identity, or whatever you want, his orientation, whatever. He wasn't ready to play NFL football. He just wasn't. But the Rams drafted him because he was a local product in Missouri. And I'm sorry, I know they say there was no pressure, but there was probably pressure. Come on. If there wasn't any pressure, I think Sam would have been picked up by somebody else, but he wasn't. He flamed out in Canada as well. He had other issues going on. But the Rams did draft 2 players out of Missouri that year, E.J. Gaines, who was eventually traded to Buffalo, and Michael Sam, who didn't make the team. In 2017, Eastern Washington. Remember a guy from Eastern Washington the Rams got? I think his name's Cooper Kupp. But later on in that same draft out of Eastern Washington, probably while they were scouting Kupp, they saw this edge player named Samson Ebukam. And they drafted him. And the interesting thing about Ebukam is that if you look at those 3 6th-round picks the Rams have, it's because Ebukam signed with the 49ers last offseason, and the Rams got a compensatory pick for him. So that was a good signing for the Rams, or a good draft for the Rams. In 2018, the very next year, the Rams drafted Joseph Noteboom. If he re-signs, he's projected he's got to be a starter if Whitworth retires. But and then they drafted his teammate, Trayvon Howard. They both went to TCU, but as they were probably scouting Noteboom, right? Because remember when they signed Whitworth was a veteran. Whitworth had already had a dozen years in the NFL. And so they were probably thinking, okay, in a few years, Noteboom will come in. I don't know if the Rams planned on Whitworth playing at such a high level for this long, but Noteboom was an excellent draft pick. And then they reached down and drafted Trayvon Howard, his teammate from TCU. And of course, Howard had the interception that closed the deal in the NFC title game against the 49ers. The very next year after that, in 2019, the Rams drafted out of Washington, Taylor Rapp, and Greg Gaines, both contributors to this season, both great contributors this season, and of course that gives you an idea of when you're looking at the draft. Okay, and you got the draft board and you see all these names. If you see somebody that pops up in an area of need for the Rams, and you see they got somebody from his school. Maybe there's a guard or a tackle the Rams are looking at, right? Dylan Parham from Memphis or somebody. Is there somebody from Memphis also that is a DB, a receiver, a running back that might be on their board right now? And we've seen the Rams at least half the time in the sneak draft is that while they're scouting one player, they see another. That's not unique to the Rams, but it's something that keeps you focused and engaged in how important this part of the season is for the Rams going forward. Thankfully, we're over the talk of McVay leaving. Thankfully, we're over the talk of Aaron Donald retiring. We're still not over the talk of Aaron Rodgers and everything, but we'll be following it, and we'll be continue talking Rams football. We'll be back tomorrow talking a little more NFC West. And as we build forward towards the future. Hey, just want to say thank you so much for clicking on. Say thank you for your support. Reminder, my novel, Tangent Dreams, about a high school football novel, is available at Amazon.com. And you can follow me, Joe Tarosian, at joetarosian.com, or hit subscribe. Please hit subscribe and like right here on this channel. And we're going to be coming at you Monday through Friday as often as we can with about 20 to 25 minutes of Ram Talk in this off season and going forward. All right, I'm Joe Tarosian. Thank you so much for clicking on. We will talk to you soon.